Shumai guys, welcome back to the Life to the Full podcast, the podcast that helps you make the most of your time here on Earth. My name's Dav Morse, I'm your host once again. I feel like it's a good sign that whenever I put on this music and hit record, I just get this surge of energy, this pumped up feeling of thinking, yes, I want to share something, I want to get my thoughts out there, hopefully help a few people. And today, I want to reflect on something that happened over the summer holidays. As you know, we've spent the last 4 weeks in France, and now we are back home. Kids are back in school, first day today. And it's time to hit record. Over this summer holidays, my wife and I hit a special milestone. A special milestone in our relationship. We celebrated our anniversary. We celebrated 20 years of marriage. 20 years. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Dav, you're not old enough to have been married for 20 years. You must have got married when you're 16 or something. Well, there we go. Think about that. Some of you might be thinking, gosh, I can't imagine being married for 20 years. Some of you might be thinking, only 20 years, golly. Such youngsters, such whippersnappers, they've got so much to learn. So what I wanted to do today was take some time to reflect back on 20 years of marriage, reflect back on some of the lessons that I have learnt in the hope and the expectation that it may be helpful to some people out there. This is not a step-by-step guide for how to have the best marriage, step-by-step guide for how to last 20 years in a marriage. This is merely one man's reflection on 2 decades with the wife of his youth and observing marriages of people who've been married longer than me and less than me. Some marriages who have lasted the test of time and some marriages who have fallen apart. I've learnt a thing or two worth sharing. Not because I've got it all sorted. Well, we know we haven't. We haven't got it all sorted. None of us have got it all sorted. But maybe, just maybe, it might benefit somebody who wants to stay married or in fact build a marriage that lasts 20 years or even longer. My goal is to hit 80 years of marriage, which will mean that I have to live to 102. I fancy my chances. I'm not sure about my wife's. She's maybe a little bit more complicated with the health front than me currently. Who knows? That may change. Now, I recognise this is a complex and delicate topic. It's just something that I know people currently going through marital struggles, currently going through thoughts of, am I going to stay married? How am I going to make this relationship work? And also people who have, within the last year, had their marriage ended from various ways. And just thinking, I want to be sensitive to those people as well. So just bear with me. There are some words at the end which I'd like you to stick around for. Now, I'll be honest with you, there have been times, certainly early on in our marriage, when we wondered whether it would work out. Would we make it to 3 years, to 5 years? Or would we just take a step back and say, no, this isn't working out? Even recently, with the stresses and strains of family life and work life and building businesses, we found ourselves asking the question, is it worth it? Found ourselves thinking, if something doesn't change, I'm not sure that this will last. Something's going to break, whether it's us or one of us or both of us. Is it worth it? After 20 years, I can say absolutely heck yes. So what are some of the lessons that I have learned. Let's start at the very beginning. Lesson number 1 is to choose your spouse carefully. Choose carefully who you want to marry. I have a very high view of marriage, and I encourage people I encourage other people to have a high view of marriage. I went into marriage with a full expectation that this was for life. This was going to be who I was going to be with for as long as we both shall live. And so when I chose a wife, I wanted to choose somebody who has the same core values and beliefs as I do. I would go even as far as to say the same faith as you. So the most important lesson, choose a spouse who has the same core values and beliefs as you. I know that opposites attract, and yes, differences can be wonderful. My wife and I complement each other in many ways. My wife's attention to detail balances out my big picture visionary life. She's the one that is the implementer. I'm the ideas guy, and I have far too many ideas that she can actually implement, or she would want to implement, but she does help in that aspect, and I have helped her to relax, to chill out, to maybe be a little bit less stressed out in life. And so those are wonderful to have those differences, but the one thing that has kept us together is our common faith, our working towards the same life view, working towards the same end goal. The way that you view the world has to align with your spouse. I've seen too many marriages struggle because one person thought they could change the other after the wedding. That's not fair to either of you. Yes, you will change. Yes, you will hopefully mature. Yes, you will become wiser as you go older, hopefully. But you don't go into marriage thinking, I'm going to change this person. You go into marriage thinking, I want to change for this person. Choose someone who shares the foundation of your life and then build together from there. If you are misaligned on some of your core values, you are heading in the opposite directions from the beginning, and that makes it much harder to last. I'm not saying that you have to have all the same interests and agree on absolutely everything. There are certainly things that we disagree on, but that underlying core value is one that we share together. The other side of that coin is be a person worth marrying. I hesitate to ask the question, would you want to marry you? I mean, I would want to marry me. I think I'm awesome. But I realize that I have a different view of myself than many other people. Many other people would think, oh no, I couldn't possibly marry myself. I've got so many flaws. That's just a little quirk that I have. But are you the kind of person that would make a good spouse? Are you the kind of person that would make a good husband or a wife? Are you growing in character? Are you maturing? Are you able to take care of yourself, be independent but also interdependent? Are you able to look after yourself and also look after others? Marriage doesn't fix our character issues, it reveals them. So we want to be the kind of people that are open to growth, open to having our weaknesses exposed, and be willing to improve on those. It wasn't until I got married that I realized how selfish I could be as a person. I got married, and before I got married, the only person I had to think about was me. And then all of a sudden my decisions affect somebody else, and you just get exposed. And then having kids as well later down the line exposes you even further. So be the kind of person that is working on your character flaws, working on yourself before getting married. I did recently hear somebody say, I want to get all my emotional beep together before I have kids. You could say the same thing about getting getting married. I want to have all my emotional baggage dealt with before I get married. You probably will never get married, and you probably will never have kids in that situation. But be willing to grow as a person. Lesson number 2, I think, only. Marriage isn't just about happiness. Now, some of you may get agitated at the word holy, but let me just explain myself. I saw a book title once, something along the lines of, marriage wasn't meant to make you happy, it's meant to make you holy. Now, you can take that from a faith point of view or from a non-faith point of view, as marriage isn't the thing that should make us happy. Marriage is a tool which God can use to refine us as people, to chip off some of those sharp edges I've already mentioned, selfishness and pride and arrogance and a desire to be right all the time. And being married is difficult. Being married helps chip away at some of those character flaws, and you become more and more mature, hopefully. That can happen with marriage. Obviously, it can go the other way. But use marriage as an opportunity to grow. I know it sounds the opposite to what culture would say. Culture would say, if it feels good, do it. If it doesn't feel good, then it's probably not right for you. Get out of those relationships that aren't serving you. Get out of those relationships that aren't making you happy. They have this emphasis on happiness. But I am much keener on having a purpose. I'm much keener on emotional growth, and I'm much keener on growing as a person. I mean, I know I've said growing as a person loads of times, but yeah, happiness isn't the end goal. Being married is one of the most sanctifying experiences you can have. It calls you to forgive repeatedly. There are some seasons, sometimes long seasons, where marriage feels more like work than joy. But work can be joyful. And if you've worked a garden or if you've worked at building something, you can look back on what you've built and be proud of what you've built. And I look back at my marriage over the last 20 years and I am proud of where we have come from and what we've come to. And I live in hope and expectation and excitement of what the next 20 years has to give to us, or have to bless us with. Next lesson, the power of words. Don't criticize your spouse. Especially, and I can't emphasize this enough, especially don't criticize them to other people. I've seen this destroy, poison, turn spouses against each other. I've seen people criticizing their spouse in front of them or behind their backs and looking for validation, looking for some kind of, oh, well, my spouse did this, but don't you think that's wrong? Those kind of things. Don't be someone who criticizes your spouse. It starts to poison your own mind. It might feel good in the moment, a bit of sympathy, someone taking your side, but you're building a case against your marriage every time you do it. If you speak negatively about your spouse to others, you're not just venting, you're rewriting the story of your marriage in your mind. You're training yourself to see the problems rather than the beauty. You're creating distance rather than intimacy. Marriage is all about creating intimacy and creating oneness and becoming one. And criticizing your spouse does not do that. Criticizing your spouse does the opposite of that. If you need to process difficulties, obviously we all do. Obviously there are things that our spouse will do which will wind us up, things that we might think are not good, things that are unfair. Find someone to do it find someone who can help you work through those. Don't just talk about it mindlessly to your friends. Have someone walk you through those disagreements, walk you through those issues. On that point, never take them for granted. It's so easy for one spouse to feel undervalued because they are maybe serving more, they are doing more, and the other spouse just takes them for granted. And it might mean that the opposite way around, they're taking themselves for granted, or they're taking the other one for granted in an opposite way around. You stop noticing when they make an effort. You'll assume that they'll always be there. You'll assume that they always forgive and they always understand. And I've certainly been guilty of allowing my wife to feel like this. It's never my intention to take her for granted. But she says, I feel like I'm not valued enough. I feel like you just expect this and this and this from me. And you never think about doing it yourself. You never think about the fact that I have to do all this stuff. Am I taking her for granted? She certainly feels like that at times. So I need to take action, address that. Be thankful for your spouse. We know that gratitude is a massive way to soften the heart, to take our view outside of ourselves, take our view outside of just us. Be thankful. Just thank your spouse for something that they've done. Just thank your spouse for something that they do regularly for you. Leave them notes. I know that's a bit cliche, but leave them notes thanking them. Comment on something lovely about them. I don't know where we are, number 5. Put the other one first. Put your spouse's needs above your own. I know this is a controversial one, and by even saying out loud, I can hear people saying, no, I can't put him first because he'll just take it for granted. He'll just take. Well, how about going back to that first point? Become a person who is willing to give, and encourage your spouse to be someone who gives. It's not about becoming a doormat or not looking after yourself or not prioritizing yourself, but it is about giving out to the other person. I've heard other people say that marriage isn't 50-50, it's 100-100. I know that's not attainable all of the time, or even probably any of the time, but that's the goal, to always be putting my effort into my spouse, and my spouse always putting her effort into me. And that is the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Here's the tricky bit. You can only control your half of that equation. You can't love your spouse into loving you back the same way. You can only be faithful to your part, and then just trust God with the rest. One thing I've learned over the years is whenever there is conflict, it's never, I'll use the word never, one person's fault. It might even be, 95-5, but it's probably closer to 60-40, whatever you're arguing about. Usually all you can see is your point of view, and this is certainly something that early on in our marriage, I would always want to be right. I'd always think, oh no, it's her problem, she should be doing this, she should be doing that. But there's always another side to the story. There's always another person that has contributed to the problem. But this is the best bit. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. If you are young, if you are early in your marriage, you may not believe that, you may not want to hear that, but it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. Even when I think I'm right, I will now, hopefully more often than not, choose the path of preserving the relationship over making a point at being right. When I was in my 20s, I would absolutely make sure that I won every argument. But that doesn't create intimacy. That doesn't create oneness. That pushes apart. That pushes away. And so I heard this from Terry Real, who's a relationship expert, and he put it something along the lines of, it doesn't matter who's right and wrong. What's important is that relationship. Pride is a marriage killer. The need to be right, to win the argument, that just destroys intimacy. This is one of the lessons that I learned. I think I might have even shared this on the 41 lessons in life that I did on the podcast last year. But always be the first one to apologize in any situation. Even if you are on that 10% side of the wrongness, be the first one to say, I'm sorry that I did this. I'm sorry that me doing this has resulted in this in our relationship. And even if the other person doesn't reciprocate immediately, you are showing a willingness to serve the other. One of the lessons that we have learnt, which, take it or leave it, I know it has been a great encouragement to many people who we've kind of mentored over the years. We have run marriage clubs, weird, husband-wife club we called them. We never got to a better name for it. But we have done a couple of times now in our church, gotten together with the young marrieds, those that have been married 0 to 5 years, sometimes longer, sometimes up to 10 or 11. I think that's the longest we've kind of shared with. But yeah, we've cared for several couples over the years. And one bit of advice that has transformed many, many lives is pray together. Pray together every night. My wife and I, before we go to sleep every night, we share a little Bible verse and we pray together. It only takes 10 or 15 minutes, but it is so important. Again, that building something together, being on the same page spiritually is so important. I've never seen a marriage that prays together regularly fall apart. There's something special about coming before God together and sharing your struggles together and praying for things together. One of the books that helped us to understand quite incredibly, really, how the other one works, apart from the Enneagram book, which is called Road Back to You. Check that one out. But the Love Languages book by Gary Chapman. Originally, it is written as a Christian book. I think it's made its way into the secular world by now. But a chap called Gary Chapman wrote a book called The Love Languages. And essentially, he says there are 5 ways that we feel love and that we give love. And usually the way that we feel love is the way that we do love for other people. But often you end up with spouses with differing love languages. So the 5 main love languages that Gary Chapman talks about are words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, quality time, and the other one is words of affirmation, quality time, gifts. Oh, physical touch. Of course, physical touch. And so my top 2 love languages are physical touch and words of affirmation, and they are the bottom of my wife's. And for her, quality time and acts of service. Time is important to me, but the acts of service doesn't really hit it for me. So when she's, looking after the house, it doesn't hit in the same way as when she takes my hand and holds my hand when I'm out for a walk. And the same for her. When I try and give her a cuddle, it's not the same as just making sure the kitchen's clean when she comes home from work. learning how your spouse receives love is essential. Next point I want to make is growing together. I've already said that people change over time. People grow, hopefully. The key is to make sure that you grow together rather than apart. I said it earlier, if you have that common faith, that common base foundation for your marriage, that you can work together towards something bigger than just you and your spouse, then that is something that will preserve marriages rather than growing apart. I'm not the same person as I was 20 years ago. My wife's not the same person as she was 20 years ago. We have grown, but we have grown together. But here's the possibly most important lesson of all, the most important decision. And it sounds a bit weird, sounds a bit simple, but the most important decision that you can make for your marriage to last is to decide to stay married. I know it sounds simple, but just deciding to stay married gives you a sense of security, it gives you a sense of peace, it gives you a sense of, I know whatever we're going to go through, we will get through. In a culture where we're told that love is just a feeling, and then when your feeling goes, maybe you can get rid of your marriage as well. But real love is a decision. Real love is an action. Real love is giving yourself up for your spouse. It is a commitment. It is a daily commitment. It is something that, we just decided 20 years ago that we weren't gonna waver from. And that has kept us together through thick and thin. Now, I am not advocating staying within abusive relationships or even necessarily relationships where there is unfaithfulness, although I do believe in forgiveness. But a general commitment to each other, one that is not easily broken, not easily shaken, is vital. Another lesson, maybe I'll share, some of my failures here as well, but the role of friends in your life. Have friends who will call you out on behaviour that is causing you to drift apart from your spouse. It's crucial, and I've been guilty more often than I'd like to admit of not being that friend often enough. I have not called out people's behaviours when I've seen people criticising their spouses, or maybe spending more time with somebody from the opposite sex that they shouldn't, or maybe even something as simple as never going to bed the same time as your spouse. I've not called people out on it more often than I have, and that is a reflection on my weakness. Some of those marriages are now over, sadly, and I wonder, what if I'd been brave enough to have that difficult conversation? What if I'd asked hard questions? What if I'd reminded them what they stood to lose? We need friends who love our marriages as much as they love us individually. That's really wise, actually. Sorry, even if I say so myself. We need friends who love our marriages as much as they love us individually. Friends who will say, I'm a bit concerned about how you're talking to Sarah lately. Or, that relationship with your co-worker sounds like it's getting a bit intense. Are we sure that's a good idea? These conversations are uncomfortable, but marriages are too precious to lose for lack of difficult conversation. Now, there are two things that are most cited when it comes to marriage breakdown, and they are money and physical intimacy. The two things that cause most marriages to fall apart are one of those two things. I've got loads of content on money and money goals, and I am quite blessed, I suppose, that my spouse doesn't really care about money. She doesn't really think about it. She's not a big spender. She's not a big saver. She doesn't really give it much thought at all. She obviously would say, oh, it'd be nice if we had a bit more money, but we haven't had to have massive conversations. She's trusted me completely, and I fully intend not to take advantage of that trust. But I know many people do fall apart because they fundamentally have different views of money. It is completely worth having conversations about your money story with your spouse. Where does this attitude towards money come from? What was money like in your household as a child? What was your first memory of money? What are the kind of stories that you tell yourself about money? Asking those questions, and hopefully maybe even before you've got married. And then when you are married, having regular catch-ups, conversations, financial meetings. I know some couples who have weekly budget meetings. Not necessarily for us, mainly because I don't like budgeting, but you know, those can help. And then physical intimacy. Very vulnerably, this is one of the things that early on in our marriage was very difficult and was a cause of a lot of tension and stress. And yeah, I would encourage anybody who is going through that to seek help, seek guidance, seek wisdom. We were very blessed in our early years of marriage to have several couples in our church who are 8 years further down the line or 40 years further down the line. Our pastor at the time, we met with him and his wife, and we were struggling in our first couple of years of marriage, and we went to them for some guidance and wisdom, and they opened the door to us, and he said, "It's the first 40 that are the hardest." They just celebrated their 41st wedding anniversary, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness me, but now I'm halfway there. And so I would say that it definitely has got better every year. I think that's true. And I expect things to get increasingly better over the next 20 years as well. But yeah, have somebody to talk to. Final few thoughts. The long view. Take the long view. We are living in a society which values instant gratification. We value paying for a pizza over 3 payments because we can't afford it, and we want that pizza now. Or those clothes we want now, but we can't afford. We spread the payments out over, months. That is not healthy for building a long-term view. And long-term view, having a long-term perspective is one of those key elements for correlating with success in life. Having a long-term outlook on your finances helps you form habits, good habits now. Having a long-term expectation of your relationship helps you with forming good relationship patterns now. I look at couples who've been married for 40 or 50 years and think, I've got a long way to go, I've got a lot to learn, but isn't it exciting? I want to be that couple who have been married for 80 years, who are still going for walks and still encouraging younger couples, those that have been married for 60 years, because there's still so much more to learn. We are in the early stages of our adventure together. You may be in the early years of your adventure with your spouse, or maybe not even found a spouse yet, go back and have a re-listen to some of the thoughts from today and start yourself thinking, am I a kind of person that I would want to marry? Am I good spouse material? And actively go searching for a spouse. If it's something that you have as a goal, something that you want in your life, yes, it might just happen, but it might just happen a bit quicker if you're a bit more intentional about it. And then finally, a word for those people whose marriages have fallen apart for whatever reason. Marriages who have gone through divorce. My heart really goes out to you. I feel the saddest when I hear of marriages breaking down. Everything that I've shared today is kind of encouraging and assuming that both partners are committed to making it work. But that's not always the case. Sometimes one person can be fully committed and the other one decides, actually, you know what, I'm out. That is incredibly difficult. They are incredibly hard situations. And I want you to know that divorce doesn't automatically mean a failure on your part. Sometimes people leave despite your best efforts as a spouse, your best efforts to put the other one first, to forgive, to apologize. Sometimes someone chooses a path that makes marriage impossible to continue. And I hesitate to share in this section, but there are many statistics out there that say that couples who end up in second or third marriages often think back to how they wish they could have stayed with their first spouse. They're not as happy as they were when they were married with their first spouse. Obviously, not everybody feels like that. I know one friend in particular who got married young, and that marriage did not last very long, and he remarried, and he has been happily remarried for the best part of 2 decades, and that relationship is a wonderful relationship. So it is difficult, and I don't want to heap guilt on anyone who is walking through or has walked through divorce. It's simple and trite to say, but if you are in a difficult patch in your marriage, don't assume that grass is greener elsewhere. And I apologise if I have not expressed myself well enough. Know that my heart goes out to you if you have been on this path. And I hope you find happiness. I hope you find meaning. So there we go. That's it for today. Some lessons that I've learnt over 20 years of marriage. Every marriage worth having goes through difficult seasons. The question is how you're going to face those challenges. If you are single and hoping to one day become married, use this time well. Become a person that you'd want to be married to. Work on your character, your capacity to love, your ability to commit. And if you're somewhere in between, perhaps divorced or wondering about the future, or married and thriving, or engaged and nervous, remember this: love is both simpler and more complex than we often think. Simpler because it really does come down to daily choices to care for another person, daily commitment to your spouse, daily walking with them through difficulties. And more complex because we are all messed up, fallen people trying to love each other the best that we can. You're broken. Your spouse is broken. I'm broken. My spouse is broken. And we just do our best to carry on. Thank you for your attention today. I hope you've learned a thing or two. If you have, please let me know. Find me on Instagram, Life to the Full Podcast, or on Threads, also Life to the Full Podcast. Let me know what you thought, and thank you to all the new listeners, and thank you to all the old listeners. It is always encouraging when somebody says, "Oh, I listened to your episode on emergency funds, and now I've started my emergency fund." It's like, great, I heard that last night. So absolutely fantastic. Take action. Don't let this message leave you unmoved and not doing any action steps. Until next time, peace out.